Hello, and welcome to Recipes with Ben. Today's video is part 3 of trying to make excellent homemade bread from scratch. In the previous 2 videos, I used a Poolish pre-ferment and then tested a method for improving the bread proof. So if you want to see where this journey has gone so far, those videos will be linked down in the description. But in today's video, I'm using what I learned from those 2 batches to make a third loaf. But the key difference is I'm going to replace a portion of the bread flour with whole wheat flour, but also use the Poolish as a pre-ferment and also use the proofing method I learned in the last video. If you have any recommendations on how to improve bread, drop a comment down below and consider subscribing so you can see where this journey takes me. And with all that said, let's get baking. So I'm going to begin this batch just like I did my previous batch by making a Poolish, to which I'm going to combine 50 milliliters of water, a half a teaspoon of yeast, and 50 grams of flour. I'm going to mix that all together with a spoon until the flour is completely hydrated, cover with a lid, and let that ferment overnight until I'm ready to bake the bread in the morning. Then in the morning, I'm going to use my stand mixer to help with the dough formation, and into that stand mixer bowl, I'm going to add 325 grams of bread flour, followed by 125 grams of whole wheat flour, and 15 grams of salt. And after letting dry, then I'm going to add in 310 milliliters of water. And then I'm going to turn the speed of the stand mixer to medium-low for about 30 seconds, and then I'm going to finally add in the Poolish into that floury mixture. I'm going to mix all the dough together until it's fully hydrated and comes clean away from the bowl. Then I'm going to place the dough into a large mixing bowl that has a lid and place that into my oven. And just like in the last video, the oven was preheated with a bowl of hot water to increase the proofing with a higher temperature than room temperature in my house. After 30 minutes, it was a time to develop some more gluten strength, so I did this by wetting my hand first, then doing 4 stretch and folds, where I'm pulling the dough to nearly its breaking point and folding it across the dough, turning 90 degrees, and then repeating that for 4 total stretch and folds. And then after that, I'm going to make it into a ball by rolling my hand underneath the dough into a circular motion. Then I'm going to seal it up and place that back in the oven that was preheated for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, it's time to repeat the same gluten strength development regimen as before, so it's time to do 4 stretch and folds and shape that into a ball. Then I covered it with a lid and allowed that ferment for an additional 1 more hour. If your oven is a little cold at this point, feel free to reheat the water that's inside the bowl to a boil and place that back into the oven to keep the proofing broth warm enough to proof the bread. After 1 hour, it's time to shape the dough. So I first floured the work surface heavily so the dough won't stick to it when I go to work with it. And then I place the dough onto that surface, and then I'm also going to flour the top of the dough and pat that down into the shape of a large rectangle. Then to shape the dough into some kind of loaf, I'm going to pull the piece of dough away from the center as far as it can go and then folding it back into the middle and press that into the center of the dough to form a seal. I'm going to repeat this going in a complete circle, and then to seal the dough, what I'm going to do is pull 2 opposite corners away from each other and from the center, and then push that into the center and folding it inside. And I'm going to repeat that by turning 90 degrees and doing the same kind of stretch and fold. Now I'm going to flip it on the seam side down, and using a pastry cutter, I'm going to try to add tension by pulling the dough at the bottom until it forms a nice ball. Now to get the desired final shape, I'm going to add a towel into a mixing bowl that I heavily floured, and I'm going to place the dough seam side up into that bowl and cover it with a lid. I'm going to let the dough proof for 90 minutes at this point, but after 60 minutes I pull it out of the oven and preheat that oven to 460 degrees, which will also have my Dutch oven inside so that can get hot at the same time. After 90 minutes, I'm placing the dough onto a piece of parchment paper and scoring the top of the loaf with a serrated blade, and this is going to that preheated Dutch oven. And also to hydrate and make a nice crust, the dough will be sprayed down with some water at this time, and it'll be covered with a lid and cook with the lid on for 25 minutes. And after a time, this is what the dough looked like. You got a nice oven spring, but it's still pale in color. So then, to get the nice deep color that you want to develop, I remove the lid and let that bake for an additional 20 more minutes. After baking for a total of 45 minutes, I removed the Dutch oven in the loaf from the actual oven and allowed that to cool on a wire rack for about an hour before cutting into it. Now, if you look at the exterior, it has my desired color, which is somewhere between golden to brown. And if you tap on the bottom, you can hear that it's hollow inside, which means that it's fully cooked. So let's see how the interior crumb structure looks. And what you see after cutting with a bread knife is that the proofing method gives us small but even air pockets inside, and the crust is super crunchy at this point. Now by replacing 25% of the bread flour with whole wheat flour, it really adds a nice depth of flavor to the crust, and it gives a nice wheaty flavor. But unlike adding 100% whole wheat flour, the crumb is still light and airy and has lots of moisture still inside. I think this batch is better than the last 2 batches, but I want to test other videos to see how they affect the dough. So as I said, thank you so much for watching. If you made this far in the video, Consider subscribing so you don't miss out on future videos, and I'll see you again soon.